My son Marcus called on a Tuesday. I remember it was Tuesday because I'd just gotten back from checking on something downstairs for Daniel. A draft coming under his door he'd mentioned in passing, and I was still standing in the hallway when the phone rang. Marcus doesn't call on Tuesdays. He calls Sundays. Sundays at 11, regular as a bill. So when I saw his name on a Tuesday, I knew. He didn't say it right away. He asked how I was sleeping. He asked about my knees. He asked whether I'd been eating, and I let him ask because I knew what was at the end of all those questions. Finally, he said it. Pop. Me and Renee have been talking. We think maybe it's time to look at some options. Options. I'm Eugene. I'm 84 years old, and I want to tell you what those options looked like and what they cost me and what finally worked, not because it was the right answer, but because it was the only honest one. Before Marcus called, I was managing. That's the word I used. Managing. My knees were slower than they used to be. My left hand had developed a shake I didn't like, a fine tremor that showed up uninvited when I reached for things. Mornings were the hardest. The first 20 minutes after getting up felt like negotiating with a body that hadn't yet agreed to cooperate. But I was managing. I cooked, not the way I used to. I'd given up the longer things, the ones that required standing over a stove for an hour, but I cooked. I kept the apartment clean in my own particular order. I walked to the corner store when the weather allowed. I had my routines, and my routines were mine. And that mattered more than I'd ever been able to explain to any of my children. Then one morning, I reached for the kettle, and my left hand shook badly enough that I set it down and stood there for a moment, just looking at it. The kettle, my hand, the distance between them that used to be nothing. That night I didn't sleep well, and the next week, Marcus called on a Tuesday. The first option they brought to me was the one everyone brings first, family. Come stay with Marcus and his wife for a while. Just to get steady, just temporarily. The word temporarily does a lot of work in those conversations. It carries the whole weight of what nobody wants to say out loud. I went. Marcus's house is a good house. Clean, warm, full of people who meant well. His wife, Patricia, made up the guest room with fresh towels. His son, Elijah, my grandson, carried my bag upstairs without being asked. The first few days were fine. There was noise and food and the particular comfort of not being alone with your own mind. Then the adjustments started. Small ones, the kind nobody announces. Dinner was at 6. I've never eaten dinner at 6 in my life. Lorraine and I used to eat at 7:30, sometimes 8. But 6 was when Marcus's family ate, and I was in Marcus's house, so 6 it was. I sat there at 6 o'clock eating pot roast in the blue light of late afternoon, watching the sky outside the window, thinking it looked more like lunch. The television in the living room was on constantly. Shows I didn't recognize, volume at a level that had something in my back teeth vibrating. I didn't say anything. I went to my room. Marcus works long hours. Patricia works long hours. By the second week, I was alone in their house from 7 in the morning until 5 in the evening, sitting in a guest room with my hands folded, trying to find the shape of a day that didn't belong to me. One evening, I heard Marcus on the phone with Renee. I wasn't eavesdropping. The wall was thin, and Marcus speaks the way our father spoke, like he wants to be heard from several rooms away. He said, he's fine, he's good, it's just, it's a lot, It's a lot to think about all the time. Das theoretisch, and then he lowered his voice, and I couldn't make out the rest. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, and I thought, ye have turned my son into someone who worries out loud on the phone at night. I have become a thing that happens to people. 3 weeks in, I told Marcus I was going home. He argued. I let him argue. And then I went home anyway, because a man who has spent 60 years being the steady thing that other people leaned on cannot spend his final years being the problem that other people manage. It's not pride exactly. It's closer to self-preservation. The self you've been your whole life. Back in my apartment, the quiet felt like something I'd earned, but the problems I'd gone to Marcus's house to escape were all still here waiting for me, patient as creditors. The hand tremor, the knees, the morning negotiations, and new things I'd noticed while I was away. How I sometimes lost a word mid-sentence and had to talk around it, reaching for a synonym like a man digging through the wrong pocket. How the stairs to the laundry room in the basement had started to feel like a personal insult. So I did what you do. I called a service, in-home help, a few hours a day, someone to handle the things I couldn't handle without making a production of it. The first woman they sent was named Cheryl. Efficient, professional, quiet. She came 3 days a week. She cleaned. She did laundry. She organized my kitchen with a system that made sense to her and no sense to me whatsoever. I spent 2 days after her first visit looking for my cast iron skillet, which she had moved to a cabinet I hadn't opened since Lorraine was alive. This is going to sound ridiculous, but yours said I found it eventually behind a colander I don't remember owning. I have no memory of buying a colander. I may not own a colander. It may belong to someone on another floor entirely. This is what aging does to your kitchen. Objects appear, objects disappear. The cast iron skillet reappears behind the mystery colander. You just try to cook in it. But here's the thing about Cheryl. The arrangement worked on paper. The apartment was cleaner. Things got done. But I had spent 50 years being the one who ran things, and now I was being run. She had her schedule. I had mine. They didn't always agree. And she had been hired, which meant her schedule won. And then Cheryl left. Family circumstances, the service said. We'll send someone new. The someone new was a woman named Delia, who was perfectly pleasant and reorganized my bathroom in a way that remains, to this day, a mystery to me. The washcloths were somewhere. I'm still not entirely sure where. Then Delia left. Then there was a man named Terrell. For 3 weeks, good young man, strong, came on time, but something about having a stranger in my apartment every morning. This apartment I have lived in for 9 years, where I know every sound the pipes make, where I know which floorboard complains in the dark. Something about that arrangement made me feel like a guest in my own life, and the money. The service cost more than I'd planned. Not ruinous, but real. I watched the number in my account move in one direction steadily, and I did the arithmetic a man my age does at night when the room is quiet. The arithmetic with months in it and years, and the word how long. By the fourth caregiver, I understood that the arrangement wasn't failing because of the caregivers. They were fine. The arrangement was failing because of what it was. You cannot purchase the feeling of mattering. You can purchase having your bathroom cleaned. Those are different things, and I had been confusing them. So I called the service and told them I was stopping. The woman on the phone asked if I wanted to try one more placement. I thanked her and said no. Now, I had tried family. I had tried professional help. Marcus had sent me a brochure for an assisted living facility. A good one, he said. Clean, near the park, staff on site around the clock. He and Renee had toured it. I read the brochure the same way I used to read. Contracts at work, looking for what it wasn't saying. It wasn't saying that I would have a schedule that belonged to someone else. It wasn't saying that the people around me would be chosen not by any affinity or history or accident of proximity, but by the same diagnosis: age, diminishment, the need for management. It wasn't saying that I would spend my remaining years among people selected specifically because we had all arrived at the same difficulty. I called Marcus and told him I wasn't going. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Pop, I don't know what else to suggest." I told him I didn't either. And that was the truth. For about 2 weeks, I did very little. I woke up, I made coffee. I sat in the chair by the window that faces the street, and I watched the neighborhood. There's a diner across and down a block. I can't see it, but I can see the people coming out of it, the way they look after breakfast, that particular looseness of people who have eaten something warm and have nowhere urgent to be. I watched them. One afternoon, Daniel knocked. He needed to know if I'd noticed a problem with the hallway light on my floor. Flickering, he thought, or maybe it was just him. It wasn't just him. I'd noticed it too. We stood in the hallway for a moment, looking up at it together, this flickering fluorescent light, two men with nothing immediately useful to say about it. "You doing all right?" he said, not intrusively, the way a man asks when he's noticed something but doesn't want to make it a conversation unless you want to make it a conversation. "I'm working something out," I said. He nodded, went back downstairs. That was enough. Sick? That was more than enough. A few days later, I was coming back from the corner store. The small one, 3 blocks. I pace myself now. I know my distances. And I passed a woman on the second floor I'd seen around the building but never spoken to properly. Younger woman, 50s, works some kind of schedule that has her coming and going at odd hours. Name was Carmen. She was standing in the lobby, holding 2 bags of groceries and her phone and her keys all at once, clearly one item away from dropping everything. I held the door. She said, "Thank you." And I said, "Of course." And I asked, without planning to ask, it came out of its own momentum, whether she needed a hand. She said she was fine, then looked at the bags again and said, actually, if I didn't mind. I carried one bag up to her floor. She thanked me again in the hallway. I said it was nothing, and then, because I was not yet ready to go back to my apartment and the chair by the window and the view of people who had just eaten breakfast, I asked about the building. Had she had problems with hot water on her floor? There'd been an issue on mine a while back. She hadn't. But the question kept us talking for a few minutes, standing in the hallway, two people with no particular reason to be standing in a hallway having a conversation about hot water pressure. Before I left, she said, I see you every so often in the elevator. I always mean to say something and I never do. Basir Sasiaru. I said, well, now you did. That was a small thing, but small things are how everything starts, in my experience. The big things, the ones that change the actual shape of a life, rarely announce themselves. They come in sideways. They look at first like nothing. Over the following weeks, something shifted in the building's geography. Not dramatically, incrementally. Carmen's schedule had her leaving before 7 a.m. on certain days and coming back late on others, and there were mornings. She knocked on my door, quiet knock, not urgent, to ask if I could listen for her delivery. I was up anyway. The package would be safe with me. She started leaving me things, fresh fruit once, a container of soup another time, a loaf of bread from a bakery she passed on her route. She said it was extra. I said thank you and didn't argue, which is the thing I would not have been able to do 10 years ago. Lucas started coming around more. Daniel's boy, on a Saturday, he sat with me in the hallway while I looked at a hinge on the stairwell door that had been loose for weeks. He handed me things without being asked. He asked how the hinge worked, and I explained it. And he listened the way children listen when they're actually interested and not performing interest. After he said, my dad can't fix things like that, I said, your dad does other things. Lucas considered this, said, yeah, and that was a complete exchange. That was a full conversation. There was a man on the ground floor, older than me, Walter, who'd had a fall and was using a walker now and didn't like going out in weather. I had been where Walter was, not exactly, but close enough. I started picking things up for him when I went to the corner store. He'd leave a note under his door with what he needed, cash folded inside. I stopped taking the cash after the third week, and he argued with me about it, and I said, Walter, I'm going there anyway. Stop making it into a thing. And he called me a stubborn old man, and I told him that was the most accurate thing anyone had said to me in years. I want to be careful here. I am not telling you that I solved anything. My knees are still my knees. My left hand still has its opinion about things. There are mornings when the arithmetic of what I can and cannot do runs in my head before I've even had coffee. But something that had been missing came back. I'm not sure I have the right word for it. It isn't joy exactly. Joy is too large, too declarative. It's smaller than joy. It's closer to purpose. The particular feeling of being in motion towards something that isn't just your own maintenance. When I was bringing things in for Walter, I wasn't thinking about my knees. I was thinking about whether Walter wanted the store brand broth or the other kind because he has opinions about broth and had made them clear. When Lucas was handing me tools in the hallway, I wasn't thinking about the tremor in my left hand. I was thinking about how to explain a hinge to an 11-year-old in a way that would stay with him. I had spent so long, months of trying family, trying caregivers, waiting for some institution to solve the problem of my diminishment. And the answer turned out to be something I hadn't tried on purpose at all. I had just stopped managing for a moment. I had held a door. I had carried a bag. I had let a boy hand me a screwdriver. I had let the building in. Marcus called the following Sunday. On time, 11 o'clock, reliable as always. He asked how I was doing, and I said better. He asked what had changed, and I tried to explain it and couldn't. Not exactly. So I said, I found something to do that isn't about me. He was quiet for a moment. That's good, Pop, he said, and he sounded like he meant it. He also sounded like a man who didn't entirely understand what his father was saying, which is the normal condition of children, and I didn't hold it against him. I am still in this apartment, same one bedroom, same neighborhood, same chair by the window, where I can see the people coming out of the diner down the block, loose-limbed, full of breakfast, unhurried. I have my limits. I know them better now than I ever have, which is either wisdom or defeat. And I've decided to call it wisdom. Some days, Daniel or Carmen checks on something. In that way, people who live near each other check on things, practical, quiet, without making a ceremony of it. Some days, I check on Walter. Some days, Lucas comes by on a Saturday with a question that isn't really a question. It's just an excuse to sit somewhere for a little while, and I provide the somewhere. What I didn't expect was this, that being useful to other people would do more for my body than any arrangement I'd paid for, not because of some philosophy about purpose and meaning. I'm too old for philosophy. It takes too long, and the return is uncertain. Just practically, when you're needed, you move. When you move, things work better. When things work better, you sleep. When you sleep, the mornings are easier. The arithmetic changes. I spent months looking for the version of help that would let me stay myself. What I found instead was that staying myself was the help, that I had things to offer that no brochure listed and no service could provide, that the building I had lived in for 9 years, contained in its ordinary comings and goings, something close to what I needed. And all it required from me was that I stop treating my situation like a problem to be managed and start treating my building like a place where people lived, which is what it was, which is what I had been for 9 years, failing to notice. I am grateful for this apartment. I am grateful for the corner store 3 blocks away, for knowing my distance, for the fact that my legs still carry me that far when the weather is reasonable. I am grateful for the hinge on the stairwell door, of all things, for the fact that it was loose and that I had the tools to fix it, and that an 11-year-old boy handed me things while I did. I am grateful that Marcus called on a Tuesday when he didn't usually call. I am grateful that his concern, which felt for a long time like pressure, was really just love in a shape I wasn't used to receiving. Lorraine would have seen all of this faster than I did. She always saw people more quickly than I did. She had that particular sight for what people were actually offering when they said ordinary things. I'm slower at it, but I got there. That's something. Thank you for sitting here with me, for letting an old man talk through something he's still working out. If you want to come back and sit again, I'll be here. Same chair, same window, same view of people who've just had breakfast and have nowhere urgent to be.